step-by-step summary of how the pole shift would most likely unfold, according to these resources. The resources describe a process where Earth's outer shell can suddenly reorient itself relative to its spin axis because the normal lock that keeps it stable weakens and fails. This is not the whole planet flipping like a ball in space. It is the outer part slipping into a new, more stable spinning position, while the deep core stays roughly in place. The process draws on real physics and real data about Earth's wobbles, gravity, and magnetic field. Here's the sequence the resources outline, in plain English. 1. Deep Earth changes begin quietly. Heat from changes deep inside Earth's core rises and weakens the magnetic field that normally acts like a brake or glue between the liquid outer core and the solid shell above it. This heating also warms the deep oceans from below. The magnetic field starts declining, but nothing dramatic has happened on the surface yet. 2. The normal wobbles that keep the poles steady disappear. Earth's rotation axis always has tiny natural wobbles. These wobbles act like a buffer or shock absorber. When the core shell connection fails, the wobbles shrink dramatically. Seasonal forces that normally drive the wobbles get stronger, but the wobbles almost vanish because the connection that turns those forces into wobbles is breaking. 3. The pole starts drifting in one clear direction. With the wobbles gone, a hidden gravitational pull from 2 huge dense rock blobs deep under the mantle becomes noticeable. The pole begins moving steadily toward a new resting spot. Data show this drift is real, measurable, and accelerating. The movement follows a specific path. 4. The magnetic lock fails completely. The magnetic field weakens further. At a critical point, the electromagnetic connection between core and shell drops to almost nothing. This is the moment the outer shell is no longer held in its current position. 5. The outer shell reorients. Freed from its magnetic anchor, the shell snaps or slides into its other natural spinning position, like a spinning object that suddenly flips to its most stable axis. The shift is estimated at 104 degrees. Oceans do not move with the land, they slosh massively across continents, causing floods. Winds and weather go chaotic. New areas become the poles, old polar ice moves toward warmer latitudes and melts. This new position can last decades to a few centuries. 6. The system eventually resets. The core regains its magnetic strength, the lock re-engages, and the shell slips back to the original position. Fresh ice forms at the new poles. Much of the melted ice from the previous state, too, leaves no record in today's ice cores because it is gone. The resources emphasize this is not instant like a movie disaster. The actual reorientation might take weeks to years once it starts, but it is geologically sudden. The worst magnetic chaos and surface effects happen after the flip, not before. Where we are right now in the process, and when the crustal displacement might happen. According to the exact sources you asked me to read. We have passed the early indigo stage. The wobbles have almost disappeared. The core shell connection has collapsed to about 2% efficiency, and the pole is already being pulled steadily toward the predicted new position. One researcher states plainly on May 24, 2026, "We are already in the window of a transitioning rotational equilibrium." Another says we are still watching for the stronger signs that would trigger the full flip. The magnetic field has dropped to roughly 9% of the strength seen in the worst past excursion on record. We need a much larger drop before the final decoupling. No source gives an exact date for the crustal displacement. One video interview mentioned by the resources suggested the long cycle points to around 2030, but the researchers themselves say timing is uncertain and no one can forecast the exact moment. Zacharias' 6th paper will try to address timing, but he calls it only a prediction, not a firm forecast. In plain terms, the early warning lights are on and flashing. The stabilizing systems have already failed in ways never seen in 180 years of records, but the final snap has not happened yet. We are in the late setup phase, not the main event. How strong is the evidence for ectotheory, and what should we watch for? The evidence is a mix of strong modern measurements and suggestive older clues. It is not mainstream consensus science. Most geologists do not accept a rapid crustal flip in recent human history. But the resources show real, publicly available data converging from multiple directions. The theory makes testable claims and has had some successful predictions. However, modern science still does not fully understand the deep core, or exactly how fast such a reorientation could happen. We do not know for sure whether it will occur again, how violent it would be, or when. Compelling evidence summarized from each person you asked about. At Ethical Skeptic, he links the magnetic weakening, deep ocean heating, and ancient clues. He predicted synchronized, distant volcanic activity, and the recent Greenland ice dome melt 7,000 years ago, both later confirmed by data. His core idea, heat from the core, weakens the magnetic lock until the outer shell must rebalance. He says we are past the early stage but not yet at the flip. At Sunweatherman, he adds the outside triggers, our solar system moving through a dusty, energetic part of the galaxy every approximately 12,000 years, which can charge the sun and accelerate Earth's magnetic weakening. He points to peer-reviewed studies showing magnetic excursions linked to biosphere stress and rapid climate shifts. His work ties solar activity to the final push that could finish the decoupling. He sees the current magnetic decline as part of a repeating disaster cycle. At Zachary Osbrow, his 2026 papers use only official agency data. They show the wobbles have collapsed to 2% of normal with no precedent. The pole is being forced in one clear direction by deep gravity. The core shell electromagnetic coupling has dropped to 2% efficiency, while seasonal forces actually strengthened. Earth has 2 stable spinning positions, and the new position would put the North Pole in the Gulf of Guinea. This gives hard numbers to the decoupling mechanism. On May 24, 2026, he stated we are already in the transitioning window. His work strongly supports the decoupling part of ECTO, but differs slightly on the exact angle and new pole location. Craig Stone. He mapped erosion, sediment flow, and fossil patterns worldwide, and found they line up with a 1/4 dg rotation along the path ECTO describes. His ground truth work shows directional scouring and deposits that match what massive ocean sloshing during a flip would do. He also explains why ice cores look continuous. Melted ice from the old state 2 simply leaves no record. His evidence is physical and geometric, not just magnetic or rotational. What exactly to watch for that would verify or challenge the theory? Verifying signs. Magnetic field dropping further or sudden changes in the South Atlantic anomaly. Continued or accelerating pole drift toward the predicted direction. More evidence of core changes. Any sudden jump in polar motion or cusp hooks becoming extreme. Continued bottom-up ocean heating and synchronized volcanic activity far apart. Challenging signs. If the wobbles suddenly recover, or the coupling strengthens again without a flip. If the pole drift stops or reverses away from the predicted new axis. If new high-resolution data show the deep gravity anomalies or mass distribution do not actually favor a second stable position. All the researchers stress humility. We do not know the exact trigger timing or full severity. The data they cite are real and publicly checkable, but the full story remains an active question, not settled fact. The resources you provided give a consistent picture of a system already far from normal and moving in the direction the theory predicts, but the final step is still ahead of us.